Welcome back to another episode of the HigherUp podcast. I'm your host, Michael Smoke, and today we're joined by my guest, Gabriel Pinto. He's a thought leader and community leader in the Atlanta area. He is a mindset and personal development coach, a good personal friend of mine, and a guy that I've actually been working with personally to help myself align with my vision, my mission, and my purpose, and what felt like I've been put on this earth to do. And I'm really excited to have you on the show today. Thank you for coming on, man.
Heck yeah, I'm super excited to be here. Appreciate you. Very grateful. I interviewed you on my podcast a couple months ago, and we weren't as close then, but I was super grateful to have you on then. And it's a cool experience to be on your podcast now, especially after getting to know each other more, because I knew of you, I heard about you, but I didn't know much. I think we met through, I want to say Colin or one of the run clubs, Colin Beecham, and then I think you came to one of my events that I'm sure we'll get into as far as the events that I would host here in Atlanta, all about helping people align to their purpose. And one thing I want to say about you of why I'm appreciative of being on this podcast is, yes, people see the success and the traction and the impact that you're having online. But I told my wife this, I said, the reason I love Smoke so much is most people, when you get to know them, they're a lot bigger than what they seem until you get to know them. Like everybody's online, they have this type of personality, and then you get to know them and you kind of get let down. You're like, dang,
yeah, never meet your heroes.
They're not as cool. Yeah, they're not as cool as I expected. But something about you is we've only developed a stronger relationship, and I've only gained more respect the deeper I've gotten to know you.
Thank you, brother.
That's a rare quality that most people don't have. Like you already are super authentic and open and positive online. But when you actually peel back the onion and go under the hood, it's like you even have better character and better principles and intentions that people even know about. And so that's somebody that I want to be around, and grateful for being on this podcast. And I know we're going to dive into some powerful stuff.
Yeah, man. Well, thank you for saying that. It goes both ways. I think it's been cool to go back to the first time I met you at one of your Purpose Formula events. And having heard about you, Gabriel, this coach, this guy that's a leader in Atlanta, and I remember being drawn to your energy the first time we spoke, sort of in depth at Run Easy, and just being like, you have a very stoic mentality about you, and it's someone that I'm drawn to because at the time of my life, I really needed that, which ultimately led to us working together. And I'm grateful for our friendship and the coach-client relationship we have currently as I've been working with you over the last 3 months, because it has been transformative, to say the least.
It's been interesting too. I was thinking about it on the way over here. We've just been living life together, man. It's been like a couple months, but it seems like it's been over a year, but I don't even know exactly when we met each other, but literally it's probably only been 3 or 4 months from meeting at an event to hopping on a podcast to Jonathan, who's filming this right now, mentioning, hey, you guys should run an offer together and do some events. And that just planted the seed, and both of us didn't really take much action of it after that, but we're happy to say we do have an announcement for a project that we will be doing at the end of this, that we'll be sharing at the end of this podcast. But I mean, we've done events together. We've been diving deep into small groups and the Bible together on Fridays. We broke a Guinness World Record together.
It's crazy.
We've been doing, pacing people for long distance marathons and ultra marathons and all kind of crazy stuff, going deep on coaching calls. You're teaching me a lot about health and fitness and nutrition. So it's been awesome.
The epitome of a symbiotic relationship, I think, is what I boiled down our friendship and our relationship to. And I think a lot of people that know you, there's obviously going to be a lot of people that listen to this that have never heard of Gabriel Pinto. And I have mentioned that I've been working with a coach, and I believe that coaches should always have coaches. You should always be working up and working with somebody who is in some facet of your life. They are where you'd like to be. And for you, when I look at you, you're emotionally and spiritually, religiously even in a place that I'm striving for. And so when people see a guy like you in the community or they meet you, they might think, well, this guy has his shit together. He's probably always been this way. But you've been through a pretty arduous, challenging, long life and journey to get you to what your purpose and your calling is, which is helping people find theirs. So tell the people listening, like, who are you and how did you become a mindset, personal development, and even spiritual development coach?
Yeah, my name's Gabriel Pinto. Like Michael said, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm a purpose-focused performance coach is how I would put it. Everything that I do surrounds around purpose, aligning people to their purpose for life, because I believe the secret to success is, number one, obedience to God, and number two, aligning our external behaviors and actions with our internal calling and purpose. The disconnect of how wide that disconnect is my theory of the reason for basically all issues that we experience. personally, from mental health illnesses to depression to physical sickness, disease, lack, scarcity, anything like codependent, unhealthy relationships, not being able to find your passion, whatever it is, it's a byproduct of being out of alignment from what we are supposed to be doing deep down from what we are actually doing in reality. And that doesn't necessarily mean like, that's why I'm so big on not pushing or encouraging people to just go find the thing that maybe that looks successful or they may think that they can make the most money in. It's not about that. It's about true fulfillment. Material success without internal fulfillment can feel like the ultimate failure. So if we chase a paycheck, or if we chase the big milestone, or if we chase what we think, society's thrown on us that is success, one of the worst things that we could do is feel like we've reached success by doing something that we weren't created for. And then, because then it's like the ultimate, depression and questioning, like, who are we? What does this mean? I thought that this is what life was about. And so, yeah, that's how I would describe what purpose is. And for me, it was a almost obsessive pursuit of finding the remedy for the pain in my life. And that ultimately then became my purpose. I always talk about how in this purpose formula that I created that I'm sure we'll break down, one of the components is pain. It's actually the last component, and I think possibly one of the most important components, because people are trying to avoid their pain, but in reality, in embracing your pain and then overcoming the pain is typically where your purpose lies. Like the thing that you're struggling with the most is actually gifted to you as a blessing so that you have the opportunity to overcome it so that you could serve others with it. Our story is bigger than our story. Our story is not meant for us. Your story of going from overweight, unhealthy, a drinking, partying, alcoholic, all that stuff, to now living this higher up wellness lifestyle, that whole process wasn't even for you. It was for other people like me, and we'll probably get into this later on too, but I just had this, it's top of mind because I just had this conversation with a client this week as far as how I looked him in the eye after he told me some stuff and he shared some things he was struggling with. And I just took a pause. I went deep within, closed my eyes, and I just opened my eyes and said, hey, guess what? You're fucking me over. Because you operating out of the lower frequency version of yourself is fucking me over. Because you being in your purpose only has a better impact for every single other person on earth. You're helping contribute to the betterment of society and to the world by you being in alignment to your purpose, not having a mindset of, I just want to be positive and I just want to serve and, give back to everybody. That's awesome. But the best, most effective way that you can help the world is by aligning to what you are put here on earth for. And so therefore, when people don't find it and therefore aren't operating out of it, they're affecting other people. There's a proverb, the one who holds the grain, has a curse coming his way, but the one willing to sell will receive a blessing. So it's basically talking about how when we have a gift, we have to sell it. And a lot of people have a connotation about selling too. Selling when you have a good mentality, intention, and can actually help somebody is something you do to someone, not something you do for somebody, not to them. People think, oh, sales, I don't want to call them. I don't want to have to push my thing on them. They want that. Not only want that, they need that because that is your blessing. So you are preventing them from being blessed by not selling them what you have, offering, serving, giving, whatever it is. So yeah, man, it was a rigorous pursuit of finding my remedy from the pain that I had experienced. We don't have to go too deep into all of that, but from a young age, a lot of people, I don't talk too much about this, but growing up with drug addiction in the family, in the home, being exposed to, in a crystal meth home multiple times at a young age, and probably 12, 13 years old in middle school, literally like seeing like a Breaking Bad scene. You got needles on the table, you got the crackhead lady that's like shaking in the corner, literally you got pots, pans, plates, everything all over the counters, like literally a movie scene like you would think. Yeah. And I was just like, what the heck is happening? And then I'd come into a different environment with other family members or other people and walk, and there would be cocaine and pills on the table and things like that, coming home from school and stuff. And I just remember thinking like, I didn't have a draw to it, which was I point towards grace, because thankfully I just was protected by not having the desire to, for whatever reason. I just didn't have that urge, thank God. but I easily could have went down that path. And then also I've been open about this even at an event. I had probably the deepest event that I've ever talked about, where I talked about a lot of my story of having sexual interactions at an early age, or being, molested, if you will, from a young age. And then that affecting me as far as like my brain and sexual morality throughout my childhood, to then leading into kind of being a womanizer and, all over the place, trying to find connection and validation, and overcompensating internal wounds that I had just through that outlet. Because any addiction that anybody has, including men that think that they are, I think this would be good for your audience too, because you got that young kind of gym, early 20s type of audience. But it's, we get it. It's like the guy wants to act like he's cool and he's finding his identity in how many women that he can get with. But at the end of the day, you're just attempting to overcompensate for an emotional wound that you have deep down, in the form of wanting to feel validated, wanting to feel connection, and ultimately feel loved. And that will never be the remedy for that. And so that was me. The reason I could say that was absolutely me. And then until the point where late teens, out of college, I dropped out of school. And my parents, rightfully so, they said, well, if you're not in school and we can't support you, you got to get a job. And so I started a business and had no experience, no skills, just—
What were you doing?
A lot of ignorance. It was like a direct sales business that I was like partnered with, like an affiliate marketing type of program of like reselling their products. So it was through another brand, but I was trying to build it on like, my own sales and everything like that. And then, I got to the point where no sales, I had no sales traction, no success, was broke, had no more money. And I got to the lowest point in my life where I ate out of a trash can. And although that was harsh, you could think, oh, young, older teens, you didn't have money, you ate out of a trash can, you're about to go homeless. That wasn't even the hardest part about it. The hardest part about it was realizing like where I was in my life at the time. And it was more of an emotional low, and feeling lonely at that time, which was crazy because I had a lot of great people in my life at that time. And I'm making the connection now because I talk about this all the time. Your breakthrough could be one conversation, one person, one question away. It's not in the information that's so complex that you can't access. It's not like the wisdom cannot be found. Search and you can find, ask and you will receive. It is literally in asking. So what's required to ask? What's required to ask is humbling ourselves, getting out of our ego and removing our pride, and freaking asking somebody that we know has the answer, that's a couple more steps ahead of us in the area that we are trying to succeed in, and ask them for help, which is, I would argue most people listening have those people already directly in their network, probably even family members, maybe a cousin, but maybe a sibling, maybe a old classmate. But because of our ego, we don't want to show them that we are in this weak space. So we'd prefer to just stay suffering on our own. And I talk about that a lot as far as just your next breakthrough is just one question, one person, or one conversation away. And if people could apply that, they could be in a way better spot. And so that was me. I was stuck in pride, stuck in ego, not knowing how to get out of it because I felt like such a low place. And therefore, I isolated myself and I was lonely. And that's where the revelation that I talk about a lot now comes from, which is isolation is dangerous and breeds depression. Intentional solitude is powerful and brings revelation. I wasn't in an intentional solitude place of intentionally going to silence, stillness, and solitude. I felt stuck. I felt defeated. I didn't want to interact with people. I felt like I couldn't find a way out. But I could tell about how that story kind of turned. But once I committed to figuring out what the remedy for my pain was on the other side of that, is where I found my purpose of doing all the things, all the disciplines and everything that I do now to more deeper discover and align to my purpose. I figured somewhere along the lines that was my purpose, is to help people realize and make these connections about who they are so they can understand their gifts, their pains, what their pain is meant to be used for, who they are, how they're going to help people, and align and push them to their purpose. So my mission is to help as many people in the world get aligned to that purpose so that they can live a more fulfilled, successful, happy life.
You said something in the last podcast we did on your show that you alluded to there throughout talking about your life and how you got here. Another term for addiction is distraction, because we want to avoid sitting with our true thoughts and feelings, because then we have to face them, and that in and of itself hurts. So it sounds like you spent a period of your life in a great deal of pain and distracting yourself from the pain or avoiding it altogether. And I think that that's something a lot of people are doing. A lot of people aren't willing to have the hard conversation with either themselves, a vulnerable conversation where they remove their ego, because so many people are operating from a place of ego and ultimately insecurity and ultimately behind that pain. So how in the form of a practical tip or action does someone get out of their ego and be vulnerable and have that hard conversation, either by looking themselves in the mirror or coming to someone they can confide in and being like, I need help. I'm not happy. What do I do now?
Yeah, well, I talk about pain as an anchor a lot, because it was one of the quotes that I heard when I was at that lowest point in my life that changed everything for me. It was, you don't get to the next level when you want to, when you deeply even desire to. You get to the next level when you look at your situation and say, I fucking have to. I have no other option. Kind of that rock bottom moment that is a true blessing for a lot of people, and a lot of people that have overcame addictions or had their breakthroughs have that similar story. They get fed up and they get to the point where they say, I can't take it anymore. And that was my situation. I thankfully got pushed into action because of the circumstances in my life, and I just embraced it. And so I talk about that in the context of manufacturing your pain. Like, figure out a creative way to manufacture your pain. Okay, this is good. The best form of finding motivation is not through a motivational video. It's not through, even watching this podcast. The best, absolute best form of motivation is truth. The truth is the only thing will set you free. What does that mean? Also, the truth is not only the thing that will set you free, it's the only thing that will set you free. Not only the truth will set you free, first it will make you miserable. Because
that
you have to
incredibly
face,
true, yeah.
Because you have to face what it is that's not allowing you to be free, and that always hurts. And so what is being free? Being free is being free to be who you are without limitations of who you think you are, or who others think you are, or what doubts you have because of things that have happened to you in your past, or things that you've done that you have guilt or shame for. It is being free to just be truly you and expressing your soul. That is the best form of motivation. You don't need to go find motivation after that if you could just align with who you are. And so the best advice I would have for anybody that's looking for motivation, it's very simple. Run an audit on yourself. I talk about this in our Friday morning men's group all the time, as far as this joke that if Christians had to, in order to maintain and qualify their Christian status every year, like other licenses needs continuous education or homework, if you had to maintain your Christian status, if you had to run an audit with other fellow Christians or brothers in Christ that could audit you for how you're living. What foods are you eating? Is it serving your temple the most quality way? What are your exercise habits? What are your sins that you're struggling with behind the scenes that nobody knows about, or that you haven't revealed or confessed or shared or repented about? What relationship do you need to reconcile? These things that could lead to big breakthroughs that we just suppress and don't acknowledge. So that's my strategy for motivation. If I'm in a low place of energy, I talk about this a lot too with waking up, on time. Mm-hmm. From when I want to wake up, if I'm off and I'm sleeping in, I always tie sleeping in. People joke with me and call me extreme for it, but I always say sleeping in is a trauma response, or that's like an extreme, that's an exaggerated explanation. It'd be more so in simple context or simple terms, it would be unresolved emotions that are weighing them down, consciously or subconsciously, that
You've
they
said
haven't
that to me
processed
before.
through. And because that was my reality. Dude, when I was the most depressed in my life was the hardest time to wake up, and was the hardest time to commit to my to stick to my commitments. But when I actually started processing through things, a lot of times in the form of conversations that I needed to have, we talk about this all the time, the last conversation that you want to have will lead to your biggest breakthrough. that I talk a lot the time about healing. Healing probably 99% of the time, if not 100% of the time, always involves another person. Like the thing that triggered us and the reason that we have pain emotionally is usually tied and associated with somebody else. So healing can almost always be directly associated with forgiveness. And so asking yourself, like, who do you have to forgive, or who are you holding guilt and shame for how you treated, and who do you need to reconcile with? That is like the biggest place of a breakthrough. And we can find that answer by combating it with truth, which will set us free. And then that's the strongest form of motivation. So running audits on our flesh to find out what is the last thing we should do. Who's the last person or the next person that I really need to reach out to that I'm hesitating or resistant to because of my ego and my pride? Or what is the next discipline or habit that I need to stick to and change in my life? So I don't know if that answers your question.
Perfectly. Well, that's one of the things we did at one point in each of our sessions, or the majority of them over the last 12 weeks, was basically a theme of what conversation do you least want to have that you need to lean into this week? Whether it was with a family member at the time, a friend, a partner, there was always myself. There was always something that I wasn't willing or able to fully admit or talk to someone about. And that goes back to my early life, and my comfortability with being vulnerable in general is something I've always struggled with. But I do think that is the best piece of advice. But the unfortunate thing is that is the piece of advice that people least want to hear, because for most people, they're going to continue to avoid it. They're not ready to hear something like that. It's like one of my favorite aphorisms: the magic you're looking for is in the work you're avoiding. If you're not willing to have uncomfortable conversations with yourself, with others, you're never going to change your life. So that was one of the exercises you pushed me to do that I found to be one of the most transformative. And it's an exercise more metaphorically in the way that I'm exercising my ability to have really uncomfortable conversations, really hard conversations for an ultimately easier life. But we did a lot of exercises per se throughout our time together. We actually have one session left that we were supposed to have this morning, but we're doing this. So that's a valuable substitute. But you took me through a lot of things to do either on our calls or when we would be talking to each other. And a lot of it is physical, closing our eyes, breath work, to figure out, you would say, like, what's your soul telling you? Quiet everything. What's your soul telling you right now? And we had some crazy, borderline supernatural moments where you pulled something out of me that I didn't allude to. We were on a freaking video call, so you couldn't have known that I was in a weird spot with it. But it was incredible. It was cool and it was powerful. So what would someone do? Maybe they're sitting by themselves. Maybe they're not working with you or a coach. But what sort of physical practices would you do or recommend somebody do to get out of their mind and into their body so that they can hear that one voice they need to listen to?
Well, you touched on a couple different topics there, so I do want to address some of those. But, procrastination or not doing the thing that we know we need to do or that's heavy on our heart. Most everybody listening, if not every single person listening, knows when I'm saying some of these things, they know there's a conviction on their heart that should come over them as far as what they know they need to do. We know we need to do more of the simple stuff, which we'll get to also probably. It's not necessarily some grandiose life change or, changing everything about your life, but one simple step. And that simple step a lot of times can be, I think some of the most powerful ones are in the forms of conversations that we don't want to have that address emotional wounds that are holding us back, because heal the boy and the man appears, heal the girl and the woman appears, heal the inner child, give the inner child the nurturing and love and connection and care that we were once craving, and greatness inevitably appears. I'll just go off on this on a second. But what do I mean by that? If we get a gash in our arm, I love this analogy for that, for healing mentally and emotionally, because it's the same physically. If we get a gash in our arm, and, think when you're a kid playing out in the woods and it's a rusty fence and it's got all this dirt all over it and it's an open wound, and you don't do the necessary steps to clean it or disinfect it correctly, and you just leave it there. You're a kid, you don't care, it's bleeding, fall asleep, and you don't do anything with it. What's going to happen the next morning? It's going to start scabbing over, but you didn't clean it out. You didn't cleanse it. So then it's going to grow in a way that's infected, and it doesn't look like it's healing properly. That same thing is what happens with our life, emotionally, mentally, and therefore why the manifestations in our life physically. I think people that are operating optimally physically is comes down to one thing. It's all spiritual. I love what you do with helping and educate people on the simple principles of health and wellness. But on my side, I focus solely on the spiritual of what is holding you down, what is weighing you down to where you can't operate, or your mind is not allowing you to operate at the optimal level that you are called to operate on, or that you deep down your innate being wants to. What's blocking? Where are the interferences? What's the subluxation, if you will, emotionally? And so it's like in physical healing, there's something blocking. So do we have to think positively? Do we have to get a lot of motivation? Do we have to read about how to heal? No, all you have to do is remove the dirt. You just need to disinfect it. And then what happens? A couple hours, a day, a couple of days later, it naturally heals. Why is it any different with our bodies? Why is it any different with our finances? Why is it any different than finding healthy relationships? We are meant to flourish and thrive in these categories of life. It is in identifying the interferences from what's preventing us from flourishing, which is where the key is. And so, yeah, I would say the biggest step, practical step that you could take when it comes to procrastination or not taking action on any of these things, I would boil it down to one word, which is accountability. You may not be strong enough to make a promise to yourself because you've been letting yourself down and betraying your soul a lot of times along the road, because we've all done it. But be strategic, and more than strategic, humble, like I mentioned earlier, to ask for help. Be humble enough to just ask somebody. Whether it's a paid arrangement and coach, definitely do that. You have no excuse to not do that if you don't have anybody, but most of you do have somebody. Again, it may not be the person that you most respect or have the best relationship with, but go talk to your mailman. If you literally feel like you have nobody, go build a relationship with your mailman every day or every week or whatever, and then ask them, hey, let's do an accountability. But the key is accountability. Getting out of your mind and out of your body to where there's a deeper motivation that will drive you outside of just counting on yourself, because we are lousy with committing to promises to ourselves a lot of times, but very few times are we willing to let others down. So then the secret in that is not, it's not in letting the person down that we're in accountability with, because we won't do that. The secret is in being humble enough to ask somebody. The reason we don't want to ask somebody to be accountable with us is because we know what it will do. It will prune our flesh. It will prune our weakness, to know that we like, and you know it as I'm talking. If you texted, if you're like, man, I really want to get on a gym routine and wake up at 5:30 a.m. or 7, whatever the heck, just start working out. My one piece of advice would go text 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 friends. I used to do this all the time and still do in certain, that's the power of a run club, right? You tell a couple people, I invite clients or people there. So guess what? I can't not show up.
You have to show up.
I'm the one that invited them.
Yeah.
It's the biggest hack for accountability. I tell people all the time, the biggest hack for accountability is stepping into leadership. And leadership doesn't have to be you're leading dozens or hundreds of people. Leadership is leading one person or really even yourself. But it can start with just leading one person by evangelizing them to whatever it is that you want to be better at. I want to study. I'm in school. I'm in college. I want to get better grades. This is what I would do. I would form a group or a partnership where I'd say, let's all study. We're going to study here at this time of the week, and we're going to cover this material. Because if you're the one facilitating it, you have this, I don't know, spirit of obligation, spirit of accountability that comes over you, and you can't let them down. You could let yourself down, but not them. And so to your point that you always make about compliance as a science, that's been my compliance, is like becoming as disciplined and accountable as possible by getting other people involved. So I did just want to touch on that. As far as the silence and breath work that you mentioned, yeah, one of my favorite quotes is, why do I meditate? Because none of this is real and I'm trying to connect back to truth. So what does that mean? Everything that we see or experience in the physical are all just effects. This microphone is an effect. Our phone is an effect. The table is an effect. The wallpaper is an effect or a creation. But it is not something that we should necessarily get attached to draw inspiration from when it came from the creation or the world without, everything we see, is a creation of the world within. So everything starts in the world within. Everything created outside is created from something inside. It's created from an idea, of an inspiration, a revelation, something supernatural that created the natural, something spiritual that created the physical. And so the job is really, the labor is in detaching from all the noise on the outside so that we can connect to truth on the inside, because on the other side of silence, stillness, and solitude is where all the answers that God has for us lie. And when people think, oh, I don't have direction, I don't know an answer, I need answers, I need clarity, it's because they're too attached to the noise of the world that shouts at us. The noise of the world shouts at us, while the voice of truth internally is a whisper that you have to tap into. So when we were doing sessions, I knew I didn't have all the answers. That's why we prayed right before this, because I know I don't have all the answers that people listening need. I have to remove my head, my ego out of the way to allow something more supernatural to emerge through me, because I don't want anything to come from me. I want it to come through me only, as a channel, as a vessel, as a messenger, so that I can get out of my way and my ego out of the way, so that people connect with something deeper and more supernatural. And so that was what the work was, is sometimes sensing, okay, there's a lot of noise going on, especially with you, which is great.
A lot of noise.
But it's like,
it gets loud.
That's another thing people don't know. The two other things that I'll add with you is that people don't know. Maybe they will know this part, but you are so willing to just take radical action in a super impressive time period. Like the willingness for you to take action on some of these things was a fraction of what it takes most people, which makes sense because of where you were when we started coaching and where you're still at now and what you're doing with in success, which just shows like success is more about done is better than perfect. Messy action is always better than perfect. Just start taking action, and that's how you live your life. So when I would tell you or encourage you to do certain things, we'd get on the next call, the next session, the next week, and I was like, "Hey, what's the review? What's the report?" And you're like, "Yep, I did this, I did that, and did it." I was like, "Well, that makes sense."
And it's shocking. It's almost like it works.
Why you're having these breakthroughs, but it also shows the connection spiritually, whether you believe it or not, because you trusted, you had that faith. And a lot of us know that whisper, that voice of truth within, but it's intimidating or scary to step into it and be totally free from the world and the expectations of the world, to be free to actually express what that voice is. And the closer you can get that gap, man, the more of a supernatural life you can live. We've been talking about Joe Dispenza becoming supernatural. That's what it is. It is tuning into that voice within that we already hear. Some's just subtly more than others, but taking the time to actually tap into it is what's key. But the other thing about you that was impressive is people see the success, the traction, the numbers, the impact that you're having, but they also sometimes forget that despite how positive that you put off and everything like that, and you are a positive guy, we all struggle with things and we all go through things. And so the fact that we were able to go deep in certain areas of your life that most of the internet doesn't get to see because of the more personal nature of the struggles that you were going through is also really impressive, that you were able to navigate through that. So that's the main reason for silence. I think if anybody could labor towards anything, it would be to labor towards getting in silence, because that's where all the breakthrough and answers are. If you're constantly, I just heard this revelation earlier. I didn't know if I was going to share it, but I'll go with it. One of the most dangerous pieces of advice you can hear is from an intelligent person that has no fruits.
Because it's ultimately nihilistic or negative.
One of the best forms of advice you can hear is from an intelligent purpose without results, because it can just come off as a distraction to what you're really trying to do, because a good idea is never as good as a God idea. And so many people are connected to the noise of the world by all these good ideas of who they should listen to at the expense of connecting to a God idea within, which is where ultimate breakthrough comes from. And so, yeah, too many people are distracted by all this noise versus getting in alignment with who they are and that voice within. And so that's the power of silence, and why it's one of the contributors or components rather of the purpose formula that I created, the 3 S's: silence, solitude, and stillness. because when we can tune into that through prayer, meditation, journaling, reflection, that's where we can find our gold. Truly, the cave you fear to enter is where the cave we fear to enter holds the treasure we seek.
Yeah.
And most people don't, and this goes into your addiction comment, man. Most people don't want to go within because it's scary. Because if you sit with your own thoughts and your feelings long enough in silence, God forbid, closing your eyes, where you really have to experience it and embrace it, what's going to come up? What's going to come up is those interferences, the roots of those interferences that are preventing you from the life that you want, in the form of healing, in the form of a conversation that you need to have with your mom, with your dad, with your sibling, with somebody that hurt you, that you don't want to have. But what blocks the way becomes the way. And where your fear is, there your task is, or what I heard you say the other day, which I loved, where your trigger is, there your therapist is.
Yeah. That's a Peter Crone quote.
Which I love because I operate like that, dude. I love getting triggered and I love facilitating, not triggering people, but I think there's such beautiful love in being able to create an environment and an atmosphere where somebody gets triggered.
Yeah.
Because the trigger, right? I said this at one of my events. It's not trigger warning. We shouldn't be throwing all these trigger warnings. It should be trigger blessing. If you get triggered, that's a blessing. And I know that's radical. You don't understand what I've been through. I was abused. I was this. Yeah, I'm not downplaying it. However, it is your blessing, because if you get triggered, it's something in your flesh that needs to get navigated through and processed. So the longer that you avoid actually embracing it and confronting it, the more it's just going to plague you. And then we can go down that rabbit hole of what fires me up with, like, let's treat the symptoms. Let's give antidepressants. Let's give, all this other stuff. It's like, dude, you talked about that, I think, with SSRIs, like literally statistically not even being as effective as we think. But it's like, it's symptom management versus root cause healing. Mm-hmm. And when you get a blessing to be triggered, dude, you should see it as a blessing. And I actively try to find out in areas, where am I triggered? And then I sit there, ask, why am I triggered about this? All right, damn, I'm triggered again. Okay, but this is good because now I have an opportunity for my next breakthrough. Yeah. Once I go through the process, I'm going to be released from this bondage that is over me mentally, spiritually, emotionally, or whatever. And then cool, I'll have my breakthrough after.
Well, there's another adage from Peter Crone in there that I love that says, life will present you with people and circumstances to reveal to you where you are not free. And that's so true. Like anytime I see something that upsets me, it's probably ultimately a me problem. And cutting through the noise and the bullshit has been probably one of the most effective things, because we all know intuitively you should meditate, you should be mindful, you should do breath work, all this stuff that's now becoming mainstream, but not many people truly practice it. And you kind of have an insight into my life and my career and how generally my brain operates from a hyper ADHD standpoint. I feel like sometimes I'm moving faster than I'd like in my head. It's like everything is moving really quickly and it's exhausting. And so for me, the silence or those circumstances that you've posed in the form of hard questions or forcing me to shut up and forcing me to say, like, what's your soul telling you? Just spit it out, spit it out, spit it out, breathe, spit it out. Like those moments have been powerful. And I think that a lot of people's healing, to your point, is in the silence. Because yeah, I have noise in the way that every time I open my phone, it's exploding with a dopamine factory, right? Yeah. And it's frustrating at times and it's hard, but it's fun. It's my job. It's my career. But other people have kids, financial struggles, relationship struggles, that we all have noise. But how many people, especially in our generation, can confidently say every day, for even if it's just 3 to 5 minutes, I have sat down and just sat with my thoughts and I have let them pass and observed them as they pass. So many people don't do that. And it's why so many people are not necessarily acutely, but chronically anxious, chronically depressed, chronically sleep deprived or insomniacs, is because they are unable to sit with their own thoughts because it's fucking uncomfortable. It's not fun. But the only way out is truly through it. You have to lean into it. And that's been one of the most powerful things that you've taught me. And I think if that's the one takeaway people get from the episode, it is that you have to be comfortable with sitting in that. And a lot of what, even though you didn't even really know about him until we started discussing him, was a lot of what Joe Dispenza talks about is something you actually said in our last podcast. You are not your mind, and you have to tell your mind and your body, no, we're going to sit here and we're going to be bored. And we're even probably going to be uncomfortable and maybe sad and maybe angry. But when we do that, we truly experience the present moment. And it is in that we can create the future that we want, because most people are living in a past that they dread or a future that they anxiously anticipate. And if you can just get into the present moment through the things you make me do in our sessions, close your eyes, because that takes the sensory environment around you away, breathe, and just let your mind quiet. It's insanely powerful. But there are other physical things that you do. You've done some crazy shit from a physical standpoint. And that's one of the things that we've shared in our relationship is I'm trying to bring you back to the middle a little bit with some of your lifestyle habits, because you saw me eat 7 fish sandwiches in 7 days and you thought, there's no way you're going to be in shape after this.
Talk about trigger warning.
Gabe was triggered a little bit by me eating McDonald's fish sandwiches.
Fish sandwich
you straight up, I think at one point you thought I was lying, because you were like, okay, hold on, you work out 3 days a week and you're eating fucking fish sandwiches every day. I don't believe this at all. How are you doing this? And it was it was there that we discovered, like, there is a lot of power in a degree of moderation, but there's also a lot of power in intense physical challenge. It's why I love ultra marathons. I love fasting. But that's what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is, at a high level, just discuss some of the crazy things you've done, the water fasts, the challenges physically, and what has that brought you that maybe it could bring somebody else from a sense of clarity or purpose.
Okay. I want to tie, we could start there. I mean, I believe the second component of finding your purpose is growing mentally, spiritually, and physically. So some sort of physical activity and constant stretching of yourself physically. One of my client success stories, he started with me. He was not in a great place financially, struggling. He didn't have direction with his career. He was overweight, eating whatever he wanted. And we started working together. And in typical, kind of radical nature fashion that I do, I'm not always like this, by the way, but when the opportunity presents itself where it's needed, I could show up in this space. But he wanted me, okay, maybe I am always like this, but he wanted me to.
Gabe just caught a look.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not always like this.
So we were talking and I asked him, like, what's your why? Why do you want to change your situation? And he got real with me about how his siblings were counting on him. He was the leader in his family. His parents were going through a financial struggle, and he needed to change his situation. And I just felt inspired again by the Spirit. That's the cool thing. It's like, if we could operate more, if you follow a good plan, you'll get good results, maybe even great results. But if you can tune in silence, or just be aware of it and have the discernment to tune in and be obedient to the divine inspiration of our soul and take action on it, that's where supernatural results are. So everybody just following a plan, that's fine. But if you could tap into the supernatural, and what do I mean by that? You know what I mean by that. I don't even have to explain it. Like, you feel it. You know what that is. You may not be able to explain it. You may not have entertained it as much, but you know deep down what that is, that voice is. And so over the years, I've just actively attempted and worked on exercising that, taking action into it. And this was one of those moments where I just looked at him and I said, you don't give a fuck about your family, and they're hurting because of you. You are telling me about all these things you're fucking motivated by, and you're addicted to vape. Get the fuck out of my face. You're smoking weed. You look like shit. What are we talking about? And so he got so fired up, he started crying in a good way, because you also have to have the discernment as a coach, for sure, of knowing when you are battling somebody's weak mind and their flesh versus empowering or breaking down their spirit. Mm-hmm. There's a difference. And he just needed at the time his flesh to be battled and to be broken down. And so guess what we did? Right away, we went to his car, we got his bongs, we got all his vapes. I got videos of it. I used to love this series. I did this with multiple clients. I started getting shit for it, which is hilarious to me, because then people would comment, well, there's medicinal benefits. It's like, dude,
nobody's smoking 10 bowls a day for medicinal benefits. Shut up.
So we smashed his
fibromyalgia or something.
Yeah, we smashed his bongs. We smashed his damn little pink vapes, which, if you're a dude, hopefully you connect with this if you struggle with it. I would say, dude, look at what it looks like when you're sucking.
It's crazy. It's bizarre.
Well, like, like you look kind of like, what are you sucking on?
Pause.
Yeah. It's like, stop doing that. You look whatever. And so, yeah, we smashed those. We go back to the house, shaved his head completely, and then finished it off with a cleanser, baptism in the cold plunge.
No way. You shaved his head?
Not a baptism, but yeah, shaved his head fully. And guess what happened? After 6 weeks later, he was so fired up and on fire, waking up every morning at 5. Like, he was just on fire. And he went from zero, never ran more than 2 miles in his life, 6 weeks training, spontaneously doing a solo marathon. Like, he went out for like 10 or 15 miles or whatever, and then just got fired up one day after running consistently after we were working together, and then just bust out a marathon. And what was cool about that story, to your question, is like about physical challenges. Nobody listening, me included, you included, just broke this Guinness World Record, which is badass because I'm 30, you're 27, 26. Like, to be able to challenge my body at that level was such a cool thing because I never knew I could run. I ran the fastest mile I'd ever ran at 30 years old. That's cool.
Most people would think they could never do that past the age of 18.
Yeah, after 18, they give up. They're done. Dude, your best years physically, your strongest years are literally ahead of you. And so that's what was cool about this story is he was an inspiration for me of like, how many of you are limiting yourself just because of your limited beliefs and your negative pessimistic mindset about what you can do, or based on your experiences or programming or conditioning of what's possible. It's BS. You can do so much more than you can actually believe. You talk about it with your story of when you achieved your first marathon and how it changed everything. Why? Is it because you want to be the next professional marathon runner? No, it's because it translates to every area of our life, including especially our purpose. And that's why I talk about it specifically with finding and aligning to your purpose. It is a requirement to challenge yourself physically so that it can translate to raising belief about who you really are.
Yeah, it's for me, running. I don't like the act of running. I don't enjoy being on the pavement running for 2.5 hours of my day. No, frankly, I'd rather be on my couch drinking beer. Yeah. But like the outcome, the me on the other side of that is far better. It's something called type 2 fun. It's not necessarily fun while you're doing it, but you look back on it and you enjoy it. But for me, what has been so clear is, I think maybe I'm being presumptuous, but something I struggled with that I think others struggle with is, who am I? Like, what is my identity? What do I lean on when shit gets tough? And in moments of struggle, you learn about yourself. You learn what you're capable of. You learn what you're made of. And one of the things you alluded to earlier was manufacturing your pain. I've had a fortunate life. So in a way, manufactured suffering through physical hardship is really powerful for me. And sure, now I've got hard things that I'm going through now in my personal life and my family, but there's something that being in an elevated physiological state for a prolonged period of time that only endurance training, for example, can do for you, that is really powerful. One of the most meditative, transformative moments I've had in my life was the marathon, but it was also the ultra marathon I did the following year. It was 6 miles long, 6.5 miles, 7 miles longer because I got lost on the trail. It was 6 hours of no headphones, beating rain, alone on a trail. Because I guess whatever pace I had run meant I was 30 minutes in front of or behind everybody else in the race. But being in that pain cave, as some runners call it, you learn so much about yourself, and you learn, again, what you're capable of from a physical standpoint. And I guess I could be presumptuous again to say that's maybe why you do some of the things you've done. You've done a long fast multiple times. You've done the carnivore diet. Has that revealed things to you about yourself?
Yeah, it's a great transition into a main breakthrough I've been having. We had a great conversation about it this weekend with some friends over that I do want to dive in with you. But a couple questions. One, when's the last time you've done something for the first time? Number two, when's the last time that you've done something that exceeded your expectations or what you thought your limits were? Most people don't even challenge that. I didn't know, honestly. Dude, when Colin was talking about the world record, I knew in my heart, I'm like, all right, Colin's putting it together ain't no way he's about to be breaking a record and doing it with like friends that we know, and I'm not going to be in it.
Right.
Like I knew I was going to be in it, but between you and I did not know. Like I was worried. I was like, am I going to?
I'm not going to lie. That's when I first thought you might be a bit of a lunatic. Because I was like, Gabe has just not been training like this. And he's just like, yeah, I'll run a 520 mile. No big deal. And then you fucking did it.
And then you come out of nowhere with like your like Michael Smoke specific training regimen. And I'm like, oh, damn it.
That's a funny thing worth talking about is that I had like this built out training block. It's a great example of what you can do with just sheer grit and mental willpower. I had a 12-week training block to knock my mile down by a minute and a half.
So good.
And I check in with you and I'm like, hey, what are you doing? You're like, oh, I just start every day with an all-out mile. And I'm like, what? Like that's not training. And then like 6 weeks in, you text me, you're like, my ankle kind of hurts. I'm like, yeah, man, you're just doing crazy shit. But it worked.
Yeah, Colin was giving me shit. He was like, yeah, you might not want to do that. I'm like, why? Like makes sense to me.
You just go, we're going to run a mile
as fast as I can every morning and cut off with sheer willpower.
Yeah, which
1
made
to
you
2 seconds a day.
It made you impossible to argue with because you were like, why? We're going to be running a mile. Why would I not just run a mile? And I was like, yeah, man, that's actually really logically that's impossible to argue with. But you did fucking do it. You ran like a 5:28 or something in the world record, which is an
7, but no one
who's counting. But that's a time that most people would look at and be like, I could never dream of doing that.
Well, the other cool thing is now I've been a runner and I've enjoyed running. Type 2, I guess would be a better way to put it. Not during, but after. I love the feeling of it. I would say I've had some of the most spiritual moments and learned most about myself on running.
Yeah.
I love strength training for the physique and the aesthetic and everything for sure, and the physical health. But I think nothing, as far as physical activity, nothing compares to the pain cave of like a long run or pushing yourself past your boundaries of what you ever expected was possible. It's just one of the best feelings ever. You asked about hard things. A couple of years ago, I put together, it was actually inspired from going to UPW, Unleash the Power Within, Tony Robbins. We went with a group of 20 of us or so. We all come back, get in my office, whiteboard session out, and I just asked everybody, what's everybody's main fears, the biggest fears that you have? And I was probably young, 22 to 24, around that age. And I just asked everybody, what's everybody's biggest fears? And we just brainstormed, threw them on the whiteboard, this. And one of mine was skydiving. So we went skydiving. One was cliff jumping. So we all went cliff jumping. One was I just had this inspiration come over me. It was to hike up both mountains. If you're familiar with the Atlanta area, we have two main mountains that people hike in Metro Atlanta, Stone Mountain and Kennesaw Mountain. I was like, I'm going to hike both of those in one day. And then I was like, no, I'm going to hike up one, down, hike the distance between the two, and then hike up the last one up and down and do that in one day, which was like about 40 miles total. Zero training. You want to talk about no training, no regimen? I showed up. I had no hydration plan, no nutrition plan. I was super ignorant. I had no idea. I show up. I got a racetrack, little breakfast sandwich and a Gatorade is like all I brought to this. A couple other people joined me. I thought I was going to do this alone. Other people seemed to be as crazy as I was and wanted to do it. Get there, I have dress socks on from the day before working. I just didn't change. Had my dress socks, had beat up running shoes and shorts on in the winter.
Knowing what you know now about endurance training is like, that is such an unhinged way to approach something like this.
It was the dumbest thing ever.
40 miles on a breakfast sandwich and a Gatorade and freaking black dress
socks.
Well,
so my logic was like, dude, it's all mindset, bro. It's just willpower, which, is kind of true. But at the same time, like you could avoid a lot of stupid injuries and pain and feelings of pain if you just prepare right. But I was underestimating it. I'm like, it's just walking. How hard could walking be, dude? Just keep going. And I found out real quick, hiking for 40 miles is, you'll definitely reach that pain cave if you don't prepare. So I got a blister about 20 miles in, halfway, huge, $50 quarter size, like on my foot. So I was like limping like the remaining time. And that last stretch was of like last 7 to 10 miles was the hardest thing in my life still today. Absolutely. No question. I've done 3 solo marathons, never signed up for a marathon and actually like trained formally. I just, again, with the marathon, I ran 8 miles and I thought that was really hard, but I could do more. The next week I did 10. I thought that was really hard. I could do more. The next week I was like, well, I'm already here. I just do a half marathon, did a half marathon. I was like, I could honestly go a little bit more, did 16. Next week or two, I did 20. Next week or two, I did a a marathon. And those were not as hard as this because I was more prepared with those, even though I wasn't like that prepared. But this was like I met God kind of hard. Like I was literally on my knees, like begging God for strength to just get me to the finish line. I was dead. I was out. But yeah, pushing yourself physically, there's something really powerful about that, for sure, about learning about yourself.
And in doing that, which by the way, are we going to do that again? Because we did briefly touch on the fact that we might do something like that again.
Why not, dude?
We're already planning enough crazy shit going on.
Just add it to the list.
I need something else.
Join us.
Yeah, we'll get them all. We'll get everybody to join us that we know. We got a bunch of crazy friends that are willing to do it. There's a lot of clarity that comes. There are things in life that you can do that breed clarity, which is the thing that I didn't even realize I was lacking until 3 or 4 months ago. I thought I have direction in so many facets of my life. I know what I want to do kind of with my career. I know what I want to do with the content, with my fitness. I've always got a plan. And then when it came to my spirituality, my faith in God, and some of the conversations I had been avoiding, I didn't have clarity. And physical challenge is a great way to do that. But in a conversation you and I had recently, we talked about what are the baseline pillars of things, your basement, your minimum that you can achieve that I talk about exists from a physical standpoint. Of course, you have physical minimums. One of the things you brought up to add to the pillar was in the solitude and silence part of your purpose formula, reading either scripture or a self-development book every day. How important is that for someone trying to find their purpose, and why?
Yeah, this is a big transition. And what I was telling you that I wanted to, emphasize on, and not only emphasize on, but honestly, thank you, because just hanging out with you, even coaching you, learning from you directly and indirectly, I've gotten a lot from you, and just the association, which is, by the way, power of association, power of good friends, power of getting the right people around you, and being intentional about it too. By the way, I talk about this all the time. The people that you want in your life, besides, exceptional grace moments of people just being put in your life that you can't explain, besides that, the people that you want in your life that will help you have a better quality of life, never interrupt your life or disrupt their life, you have to be intentional about recruiting. And it's something that is not talked about much as far as like building friendships and things like that. Also, I kind of have, I don't know, maybe a controversial view about this. I don't look for friends because some of the people around my age are getting to the point whether they're got married or they're engaged or they're about to have kids, and they're like, it's hard to find friends. Little side rant, but I don't believe it's hard to find friends because I don't look for friends. Thankfully, I'm already good with like my community and people around me, but I look to build my mission, and I look for other people that I can build my mission with, and sometimes we have fun. That's how I look at friends. And that's may be extreme, but that's how I view it. And what you could take from that as a lesson is the point of, if you don't want to look at it that extreme, that's okay. But being intentional about your path and being unapologetically you'll naturally attract those that align with that. Like the cliche, you attract, what is it? The vibe, your vibe attracts your tribe kind of thing. When you put out that energy of who you really are unapologetically, you'll attract all the people that align with that. Look at, a run club that's blowing up all over, or a coffee and chillers, things like that. Like maybe when you started, you're like, who's actually going to be interested in this? But if you're unapologetically you and expressing your passion, people will connect with it. And so anyway, hanging out with you, that was a side rant, but hanging out with you, what you've really challenged me on, possibly even said, like I said, triggered me. I didn't get triggered about the fish sandwiches. I got triggered when you ordered the Diet Coke on top of it.
Right. Like you're just loading your body with what I thought was poison. There's no way you're fit. Yeah.
But you've been really challenging a lot in me that I've been working on for my whole like adult life, but specifically over a year. I had a therapist tell me something that was one of those things that was so heavy and deep that I literally couldn't process it in the moment. And it took like days or weeks later until it actually sat with me. And I'm like, damn. But he said, hey, he told me that you're struggling with the evil spirit of ambition. And I was like, what is that, man?
What does that mean?
Right. I was like, ambition, I've always associated with positive. That's a good quality. But what he meant by it, or what my interpretation of it was there's a difference between ambition or a motivation or inspiration or desire from your spirit and ambition from your flesh. And if an ambition from your flesh is probably more so about feeding wanting things or wanting success or milestones because of how it makes your ego or insecurities feel better. And that's where I was operating a lot out of from, especially when I was my identity, bro, and my happiness was built off of milestones, grandiose achievements, and the big stage, big moments. I talked about this the past week. I had post-wedding, not post-marriage, post-wedding, deep post-wedding depression. Never heard anybody talk about that, but I put so much emphasis, so much effort, so much energy, so many sacrifices for years into making this perfect wedding and saving and sacrificing and, making this money and these different moves just so I can have this amazing wedding. And it was amazing. Thank God it was great. I got to marry the woman of my dreams, and we have a great marriage now. And it was awesome to move in with her and the experience in the beginning and everything, and still is today. But I was empty after. I literally was lost because I had so much purpose prior to that, and it all seemed like it just evaporated. The next day was reminiscing, looking at pictures and videos. That day became a couple days. A couple days became a couple weeks. Before you know it, I'm off my diet. I'm still eating whatever I want from the wedding. I'm still in celebration mode. I'm still in vacation mode. I'm still in honeymoon mode. And before you know it, honeymoon phase turned into, I'm not in honeymoon phase. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I didn't have a purpose anymore. I didn't feel I did, at least. I felt empty. And so then naturally, my response to that was, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go as hard as I've ever been. Last year I'm talking about. I lived with a client. We went from 30 days. It was like basically an in-home adult military boot camp, 7 days a week, waking up at before 5 a.m. We had to be in the cold plunge before 5 a.m.
This is when you went full monk mode.
Yeah, full everything.
This is crazy.
Full Goggins, full monk, shaved my head.
You were shredded though.
Got shredded. super dialed. If
you want to get shredded, just be an insane person. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I would have said a couple months ago. And I'm actually sharing this as advice of not to do because of the breakthrough that I've been coming to. But which is so wild to think, because when I would hear people say that, I thought it was so lame. I'm like, no, dude, you're just using an excuse to not have willpower and
to not go all in.
To not be strong, mentally strong as me, kind of thing, all that stuff. And so I shaved my head, 100% whole foods diet, no eating out, no sugar, work out twice a day, steps, miles, fasts, silent retreats, meditation. I mean, everything for 30 days. He liked it so much. He lost 41 pounds in 30 days. He requested to extend it. We did 60 days. He lost 60 pounds in 60 days. It was life-changing for both of us. So I just finished off of that leading into the wedding. So I was the most disciplined I've ever been leading up to my wedding. Then my response is, I'm so glad she didn't. Thank God for my wife, because she's got so much discernment on this stuff of when she knows I'm operating from my ego versus the spirit. But I'm telling her, I'm trying to sell her. I'm like, babe, we're going to launch into the wedding, into our marriage. What we're going to do is the first week from our marriage, we're going to start 75 hard.
She's like, what did I just get myself into? I just married this man.
I was like, this is going to be great. And she was like, I'm not doing that. And thank God, again, she had the discernment, because she was like, we're transitioning, we're moving in together. I need to step into my wife phase and stuff like that. So it was great discernment on her end, but just me being egotistical, ambitious Gabe again. And so what I do is I start a coaching program called Spartan X, and it was basically 75 hard on steroids. It was 75 hard plus wake up at 5 a.m. 7 days a week, plus cold plunge every single day, plus all these list of restrictions, no eating out, all this stuff. And so that was my response. And then on 75, I started 75 days to align perfectly to finish. So it was September or October or whatever it was, to perfectly finish on December 31st, last day of the year. So that I can naturally go all out after the high intense restriction, which then always equates to intense binging. That was the story of my life, not only in physical activities, but again, just everything. Always striving for the huge high, and the high never got big enough, so I needed a bigger one after. And so on day 40 of 75 hard, I thought it was a great idea to also start carnivore diet for the remaining 40
Good God,
days.
Man.
So then I started carnivore diet, only meat or animal diet only. And then on the last 5 days of 75 hard, I did a water only fast, the longest fast I'd ever done. Every year for the past 6 or 7 years, I've always ended the end of the year with a water fast. But this last year I did 4, or the year before I did 4. So of course, 2023 had to up it and do 5.
5-day water, and that is no food, no calories. That is water.
Yeah, no electrolytes, no nothing like that.
That's crazy.
Caffeine. So then after that, it was day 4, I think, of the fast, and I decided to push myself even harder. I'm going to go do a mile lunges by myself while fasted, just to combat any of the limitations that people have as far as like, well, when you're fasting, you can't do any physical activity. I'm like, screw that. Like, your power's from your soul, like all that stuff.
But you're climbing this peak of intensity and radical alignment with your goals that ultimately leads to this inevitable fall you kept experiencing.
Always. So again, I always say, sometimes God, by God's grace, he will throw us obstacles to push us out of our hypnotic rhythm that we think is the right path to align us more with purpose. So that's happened so many times in my life, and including this one too. Right after that, to celebrate on New Year's, I started my celebration with Waffle House. Hardcore. All-star
Give me that double all-star.
Double waffle. Chocolate chips.
Yeah. Terrible thing to do to your body after no food for 5 days.
The worst.
Yeah.
On top of the 30 days of carnivore, on top of no eating out, the 30 to 40
You had to feel like shit that day.
That's the start of it. So I start there at like 5 a.m. on the dot, or whenever the fast was like, concluding. Then I go to the Chastain with some friends. I get a bacon, egg, and cheese and some fries. And I wasn't even hungry because I was so full from breakfast. But I just, the binging concept, when you strictly restrict, the response is always intense binging.
Yeah.
It has to be. And so my mind is just like, I'm not even hungry, but like, yeah, I want to go all out.
Yeah.
So I could do that. A couple hours later, Camilla's family's like, hey, we're coming over. We're going to cook burgers. It's New Year's Eve. I'm like, yeah, let's do burgers. So I eat a burger when I wasn't hungry. Then we go to the family's house for New Year's party. They got a taco bar, and like the tacos and everything. I'm smashing tacos.
I don't like the way this story's going. Does it end with you like nearly dying or something?
Basically. Ends very bad and worse in a way that I won't describe on a podcast. But basically the next week I was out. Donezo. And then 2 to 3 weeks after that, in January, I got wrecked by COVID earlier this year. I was out for like 2 weeks, just done, not sleeping, not super tired, always wanting to sleep, just feeling all the feelings, all the symptoms. And looking back, it took a while for it to process, but with, again, spending time with you and you challenging that area of my flesh and weakness, what I've came to realize is this evil spirit of ambition was really about serving something that was for me, disguised as serving something deeper than me, which was the person in my life. I won't go into detail about, personal family member, but basically that my unconscious, like the inner child in me, the unconscious motive that I've always been operating under is I need to be the best and I need to do all these great, amazing things so that I can be successful enough to save this person. That's been the unconscious story my whole entire life. And so I wanted to continuously strive to the next level at all cost because I was committed to doing that. But I had to realize that the only thing that the hardest thing to do, the cave I fear to enter, is actually letting it go and just giving it to God, as cliche as it is, but it is the answer. And I realized through that process, a lot of this ambition was for a selfish need. Even though it was disguised as helping somebody, it was still selfish because I wanted to control it and do it my way. So I was forcing it with everything that I was doing to try to continue to stretch myself at all angles. And so when you started to come into the picture with like these simple steps and don't do 75 hard and carnivore diet's not sustainable, I just didn't connect with it or understand it, but now I fully do. And so to answer your question, number one is reading. I came up with a framework, and I think everybody can kind of do this when it comes to your purpose, because you have your framework that is directly aligned with your purpose, which I love because it worked for you, it works for you, and that's what works for others. And now you promote it to as many people as possible. I love that. I think we can all do that. So listening to one of your podcasts, I got inspired by that. I was like, what is my purpose? What's my mission? To align as many people as possible to God's purpose for their life. Cool. How did I do that? And how should I promote a framework or simple steps that other people can do the same? And so from studying and reviewing my life and what got me here, it was number one, it was reading. If you read consistently, my preference is the Bible. And I want to touch on this study that I came across this week, actually, which was wild. But I'll read it real quick. You're 57% likely to get drunk if you read the Bible 4 times. So basically, they did a study on, I think it was 40,000 people, and Christians and non-Christians. And they basically found if you read the Bible once, including like go to church one time or go to Bible study one time, it has little to no effect on at least these metrics. If you go twice, so you read the Bible once, maybe at a Bible study, and then go to church, it still has little to no effect. If you read the Bible or open your Bible 3 times in a week, it has a blimp of an effect, but not significant. If you read your Bible 4 times a week, everything transforms, which is wild because we talk a lot about like the 80-20 rule, and 80% of your week is about—
It's basically about 4 days.
Yeah. So it's like, and that checks out with your whole program too, as far as like, it's not every single day you got to strength train or walk. But it's 80% over a 3-year period, 2-year, 1-year period. How you put it, you will be unrecognizable by most people that you know if you just stick to these simple habits. And I think also my mind like didn't want to accept that because it sounded too simple, and I just wanted to think that I had to do something bigger and better and stronger, but it really is that simple because the challenge is in the consistency and the accountability of it. But anyway, if you read the Bible 4 times, and I would argue, I bet if you looked into other studies, there's probably other studies that are similar regarding just reading in general or other positive information, because a lot of especially personal development is inspired by scripture anyway.
Yeah.
But another religious text, whatever, probably applies similarly. 57% less likely to get drunk if you read 4 times a week. 59% less likely to view pornography if you read 4 times a week. 61% less likely to have sex outside of marriage if you read 4 times a week. 30% less likely to struggle with loneliness. 74% less likely to gamble. You're 228% more likely to share your faith with others. You're 231% more likely to disciple others, and you're 407 more likely to memorize scripture.
So basically, making that a root part of your routine for 80% of your week or life over the course of years reduces the risk of basically every major vice or bad thing that every human being struggles with at some point or will, and increases the likelihood of every good thing.
And so I'm thinking about that, and that came literally right after thinking about my framework, which was number 1, reading daily. Number 2, reflection. So in the form of silent solitude and stillness, in the form of meditation, reflection, prayer, or journaling, taking some time to think about what you read, interpret what you read, and think about your gifts, think about your strengths, think about your weaknesses, think about what lights you up, think about what your dreams are. Number 3, daily physical activity. Number 4, consuming whole foods diet, same as yours. And number 5, intentionally, consciously combating your vices. Because if we are not intentional about combating our vices will always be unconsciously funded before our spirit or our purpose. That's a talk for another podcast. But basically, if you get a paycheck, you're not intentionally combating your vices, you'll wonder, why is my shopping addiction getting funded first? Why is my alcohol addiction getting funded first? Why is my prostitution addiction getting funded first? The online gaming getting funded first? Whatever. It's because you're not consciously combating those vices, and therefore they're stealing the money, they're stealing the energy, they're stealing the greatness straight from you. Because if you don't intentionally slay your demons will slay your dreams. And so those are the 5 things, but doing those with the intention of making it daily habits. But the floor, to your point, is 80%. If you do those things 80% of your life for the next 3 years, let's even call it 6 to 12 months, you will literally be transformed and unrecognizable. Scientifically be transformed in 6 to 12 months in your life. And you will absolutely not only know, but have so much more energy to align with your purpose, because a lot of you guys do know what your purpose is. But again, it's the avoidance of sitting in silence to allow that voice to get louder so that you have the conviction come over you to actually push you into action, which is what you're preventing. But if you take these steps, you will be in a great spot to be more aligned with your purpose, to fully be executing on your purpose, or at minimum, be very damn near close to it, and having a lot more clarity and positivity in your life. So I think that's my 5 framework, and I appreciate you sharing yours with me and emphasizing on it so much to everybody else, as far as get your 10,000 steps, get your PMW, your post-meal walks, eat, your goal weight and protein, all that stuff. It's amazing. But the other thing that I will say, last thing, I know we're probably going over, is I was walking with Manuel, who was in the room, my sister-in-law, and my wife on Friday. And we're walking in Buckhead Village, where I live in Atlanta. And Camilla, my wife, makes a comment. She's like, it's so cool. We get to walk, and we're now all as a whole like team getting our 10,000.
Stepping.
Yeah, we're all
it.
stepping. Doing our post meal walks and everything. A lot inspired by you. And we're walking and talking and everything. And Camilla's like, I'm just so grateful for this. Like, it was a nice day. She's like, I used to really love like my goal was to live in Buckhead Village, and I didn't say anything, but I sat with that, and I was like, damn, because she's great at like sitting in like gratitude and being appreciative and stuff. I'm not. And she called me out on this years ago, probably 5 years ago. I got a dream office, top floor in Atlanta, with some of my business partners in a previous business, and I was so jacked for about a week. And then my now wife called me out, and she was like, you were so on fire, and you literally went to like this low after. It was the post wedding depression, same concept.
Same
this has
arc
been
and
happening
fall.
in my life for so long. And she was like, the problem with you is you don't know how to be grateful in the small things. And you're going to get a Lamborghini or Ferrari one day, or whatever it is that you're aspiring for, and that same thing's going to happen to you. And I never fully was convinced by it, because I'm like, we'll see once I get the Lambo.
Yeah.
But it's like, she's right. And I always had that issue of falling into just being so caught up in that big milestone and then being empty after. So point is, back to the walk, I sat there and I started thinking about that, and I got convicted. I have journal entries that I could show you from 5 years ago that I was writing out, and it's a powerful exercise that I still recommend, but it was called scripting your extraordinary life. And there's something powerful about pen to paper and how it reprograms your subconscious mind. And there's studies on this as far as goal setting and things like that too, as far as writing it down and how much it increases your ability to achieve your goals and stuff like that. But I would convince myself, you've been using the phrase gaslight myself. Like, I was gaslighting and convincing myself that this is going to happen by writing in present tense. I, Gabriel Pinto, am so happy and grateful now that I'm earning X amount of money. I'm living in, this is my career. Literally the career I'm doing right now is what I wrote 5-6 years ago, like to the T. All these other components, the wedding that I had, the marriage that I'm in, the people that I surround myself with, and where I live, this high rise in Buckhead, this amazing spot, all this stuff. It's literally exactly what I wrote down. And I convinced my mind, because when our mind, what we can hold in our mind, what we can see in our mind, we can hold in our hand. And I convinced my consciousness to the point where I attracted the things in my life and the people in my life to make the reality. I bended reality in my favor to make it happen. However, I was thinking about that. I'm like, I've spent in the last year since living in Buckhead Village, I've been in Buckhead for a couple of years, but in Buckhead Village, I've spent maybe 5 minutes being grateful for where I live. And it hit me of like, this is my problem, dude. I'm building my life, my identity, and my happiness off of all these grandiose big milestones versus the simple things, the daily actions, the things that I am radically committed to, religiously committed to, like you are with yours, and building my happiness around that. And I think when you compound, because a compound effect, when you compound these habits, big opportunities like a world record or an ultra will come up. Yeah. And you could choose if you want to do it or not. But the cool thing is, you don't tie all your happiness and you don't put all your weight into the achievement or the failure of it, because your identity comes strictly from the simple things that you do every day. And so hopefully I convinced everybody that the studies on that study, you could look up other studies for what happens if you read positive books every day. Like, there's going to be studies on that too. But the point is, like, doing something consistently, I hope I'm convinced you of that. No matter how bad of a life that you're in right now, there's no way you can convince me. If you read consistently at least 4 days a week for 20, 15, 20, 30 minutes a day, 4 days a week in 3 years, no matter how old you are, your whole entire life is not absolutely transformed.
It'd be measurably better.
like you can't convince me, because then you get so much conviction come over you. You get knowledge, you get wisdom, you get intelligence. You then start to have a conviction to lead other people. So you start building leadership skills. People want something from you. They're drawn to you. They want to learn from you. They want insight from you. You start cultivating those communities or leadership opportunities. And then that leads to other opportunities in your life. So your life will be radically transformed. But it's an easy metric to build your happiness around too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, if I could just be happy based on these things that are the contributors to all the big things, but I don't get my identity tied into the big things, but I focus on the small things. And I think that's a elaborated version of saying what you've been trying to tell me for a long time, is like, you just focus on the things that you know you can manage undeniably. Eat your goal weight in protein, 80% whole foods, walk, strength train, all that stuff. And it sounds simple, but to your point, what is it?
It's not easy, but it is simple.
It's true. It's like, it's freaking true, because my whole adult life, I've built my happiness and identity around all these big things. And so, yeah, man, I'm so passionate about this even right now in my life. Like, I'm transitioning out of the whole like Goggins mindset and like doing all this hard stuff, hardcore things to like find happiness and everything, which is still, I think there's a time for that, of course. Like,
there's absolutely a time in life to be in a period of imbalance.
Yes.
If you want to achieve something uncommon, you have to do uncommon things. And that may be a season of no, a season of not eating out, but we're talking about the rest of our lives. And when it comes to building that sustainability, I'm not always going to want to exist on the plane of ultramarathon prep Michael. You're not always going to want to exist on the plane of 5-day fast Gabe. You would literally waste away to nothing. And sometimes it's about being grateful for the pursuit of the monotonous, the basics, the minimums. You perfectly illustrated one of my favorite quotes from Alex Hormozy, which is, you're living in the goals that you said would make you happy. And yet here you are not appreciating them. And I've been struggling with that too. We talked about, I bought the car I've wanted since I was 14. It's not a Ferrari or anything, but it's like, I've always loved it. And I try to, every time I get into it, just be like, I'm so grateful for this. Being grateful for the little things and not letting that novelty of living in Buckhead Village, having a beautiful wife who's everything you've ever wanted, building the business that you're proud of. This is becoming our new normal. And it's a dangerous game that we play, because you have to learn to intentionally do the work to say, I am grateful for this. I am so grateful for the life I've built because this is what would make me happy, but never be chasing the big peaks.
I think that's true. But I think the other catch that I had was, I shouldn't really care to put too much emphasis and gratitude into things, because that's what they are. They're things.
They're things.
And it's like, I should shift my focus to being more grateful for the things that I can control, which are the simple things in life, my relationship with God, the having food on my table, on my plate, and doing these simple principles and disciplines. If I can do that consistently and I build my happiness around that, then the fruits in my life after the consistency of that foundation will all come about in the way that I want. But I was always forcing it, and I wanted to like use my willpower to do it in my time. And it's like, I'm just trying to shift out of that. So
being grateful for the pursuit of the victories more so than the victories themselves.
Yeah. But I want you to go into it, because we talk a lot about the James Clear quote. People don't rise to the level of their goals, their big, extreme, intense, grandiose goals, but they fall to the level of their systems, or they fall to the level or their commitment of their minimums. They don't rise to the highs of all the highs that you do throughout the day. Oh, I went and ran 20 miles. Dude, that was me. It was like, running 1 mile a day for 6 months is always better than infrequently, randomly running a random 20 miler.
Yeah,
it's like,
It objectively is.
Yeah. And the cool thing is, the catch there, at the end of the 6 months or 12 months or 18 months, the person that runs consistently is going to outbeat the person that does random 20 milers, without prep or training. So it's building that foundation, but not getting so caught up in the highs, but being committed to the minimums that you do every day. But speak to that, because you've been operating out of that mindset for longer than I have. And I'm now converting to adopting it, which is powerful, but you've been living that.
Yeah.
And also, like, that was another compliment I was going to give you that people underestimate or don't acknowledge. The ability, even applying this concept with content, the ability to post, because I've done it and I've been making content for a lot of years, very infrequently though, which is one of the reasons I think it hasn't had as much impact as I think it could. But where you apply it is every single day you post at least once a day, with like 2 or 3 days of a miss in the last 15 months or whatever it is. That is like one of the most impressive stats.
Well, thank you.
I view of you that people don't really acknowledge, but that is hard, and people don't acknowledge it because they don't understand how tough it is. But not only to like post, and then you got to edit, and then you got to caption, and then you got to respond. But some days you just don't want to make content. Sometimes you got nothing. Sometimes you're not that inspired. Sometimes you may not have much ideas. And I know you've experienced that because you're human.
Yeah.
But you still figured out a way to find a creative way to tap into something to come up with some sort of value, which has been amazing. But yeah, maybe speak to that, and then also just how this concept of committing to the minimums and the foundation has changed your life, and why you push that on your clients and your community.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that people have now come to ask me how to build a social media page as if I'm some sort of guru on that. But it is the pillar quote, the thing that anchors me in life, or one of them is Clear's quote about not rising to the level of your goals, but falling to the level of your systems. If you're not happy with your outputs, you're not happy where your page is at, your body is at, your money is at, look at your inputs. My input is simple. I'm going to post every day, because that's the obvious thing. Obviously, if I want to grow a social media page, I need to show up every day in the algorithm. Obviously, if I want to build a body and a physique I'm proud of, I need to do at least the bare minimum of walking, eating real food, and training a couple of times a week, because that's far better than nothing for me. The byproduct of extraordinary results is ordinary effort for an extraordinary period of time. And in doing that is why I've stuck to my minimums in fitness and have just applied that. We talked about things bleeding into other facets of your life. I've built the physique that people ask me about. Oh, how'd you do it? I just went to the gym for 8 years. I just kept eating right for 8 years. And most people don't have what they want because they're not willing to commit to something for that extraordinary period of time. And they drastically overestimate what they can do in 3 months and drastically underestimate what they can do in 3 years. So for me, I'm looking at my content, my body, my training in 12-month stints. Like, what am I trying to achieve in the next year? But if I want to get there, I have to post every day. If I want to build a body I'm proud of, I have to at least go to the gym and do 100 push-ups. For me, that might take me 5 minutes, but it's better than not going at all, because I've solidified the habit. And it's a disservice ultimately to myself to not do that. And that's why I've been pushing you on content. Is like, it's a disservice to the people who need to hear your message that you're not posting every day and not taking imperfect action. And I think if more people can just be okay with imperfect action, whether it's going to the gym and looking like a fucking idiot, whether it's posting content that you think sucks, it doesn't matter, because it's all gonna suck when you start. But people operating from ego, there's so many tiebacks to what we talk about. People operating from ego prevents them from taking imperfect action because of a fear of some anticipated outcome that's probably not even gonna fucking happen in the first place. Pardon my French. I get fired up about this because I wasted 3 months before I ever made a TikTok or Instagram page, wondering, what are my friends going to say? What are my parents going to think? What if this fails? What are the people that I was thinking about people that I don't even talk to, that I like went to high school with, who might see it. And I'm like, what group chat am I going to get roasted in? And it's, who cares? Yeah. Like, who fucking cares? At the end of the day, the thing that's been stuck in my brain in my life for the last few months is I'm literally going to be dead in not that long. Like, one day I'm going to die. None of this is going to matter. And Hormozy says, what a shame to live your life at the expense of other people's choices or thoughts or what they might think or say. And by the way, they're probably not thinking about you or talking about you.
Or the one where they say, what's the richest place in the world? The graveyard, because it's there where all the books that were supposed to be written, the movies that were supposed to be created, the dreams that were supposed to be pursued, the business that were supposed to be started.
Most people are so clinically unaware of what they're capable of. And I'm fired up about it because I was that person. I was living a life of complacency. And if I hadn't had that breaking point of just get the fuck over it, make the video. And I saw my first video a while ago and it was god awful. But if I hadn't made that video, I wouldn't be, I looked at it yesterday, I've got 945 posts on TikTok. 900, so I've done almost 1,000 videos and now people are watching. And it's only because I've done almost 1,000 videos that I have the presence that I have now. So if people ask me, how do I build the physique? Show up for 8 years. How do I build the social media? Don't miss a post for 15 months. It's in the boring work that the magic happens. And that's all I want to teach to people is there's 4 or 5 key choices in pretty much every facet of your life that you're either making or not making that are drastically holding you back or drastically propelling you forward. And most people just aren't aware of the very basic things they could do because we have this anticipation or this preconceived notion that if I want to get to where Gabe's at emotionally or spiritually, I have to do this incredible, insane 5-day fast. But in reality, You've just had a few really hard conversations with yourself. And when you look back on these key moments, it was uncomfortable, it was hard, but they're the things you knew you needed to be doing. The 5-day fast you elected to, but hard conversations with yourself got you here. For me, it wasn't, oh, I need to eat 5 meals a day of chicken and broccoli and go to the gym 5 days a week. It was like, no, dude, I just need to fucking walk more and sleep and manage my stress. It's the boring, obvious work. And if I can just teach people that it really is simple, you just have to be willing to lean into boring stuff and uncomfortable stuff at times, that your entire life will change. Like me sitting here with you, if you would have told me I'd be doing this literally 1 year ago, I would have laughed you out of a room. But it's through boring action that I got there.
Yeah. How is that testimony not like the most inspiring thing that some of these people could be listening to? It's like, what fear do you have that is worth preventing you from stepping into your dream? That's worth preventing you from feeling the feeling of having your soul absolutely lit up. There's no more valuable feeling than that. And most of us are avoiding that feeling because of these insignificant fears about people that literally doesn't even matter to us or won't care about what we're doing when it comes to expressing our soul, expressing our art, expressing our true selves. So yeah, man, I appreciate that. It's inspiring.
That's what we'll close on, man, is the quote you said to me that then popped up on my Instagram algorithm, that we've sort of touched on versions of it in the episode, but it's the most profound one often is in the fewest words. And it's where your fear is, there your task is. And I told a client that who had an obligation that they skipped out on because of a fear. And I told her, where your fear is, there your task is. You know, I'm nervous about these public speaking engagements I have on the books. That means I have to go do them. The things you're scared of is the thing you need to lean into. And if you're willing to do that and you're able to do that, your entire life will change. I affirm for anyone at all, if you lean into that, you will have an incredible life.
I know we're going way off like HigherUp wellness time frame here probably, but I do want to touch on the project that we are about to launch and announce together.
Yes.
3 events, in-person events in Atlanta, and big announcement, we are collaborating on doing a weekend retreat together.
Yeah, I'm stoked for that.
Freaking epic.
So we're lining up events over the next 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Me and Gabriel will be leading some speaking engagements with each one an overarching theme, with the summit or the pinnacle of that being the retreat. If you are a young guy and you want to be around like-minded individuals that you want to be a part of, we're booking a pad of an Airbnb. We've got agendas planned. It's going to be a fruitful, worthwhile event that I'm excited about. One of those moments that I feel like this is what we're supposed to be doing. And our goal is simple, is to provide as much value as possible so that you leave there with tangible and intangible things that you feel like you can carry into the rest of your life. So the first event, you want to run through the brief timeline of what we're looking at?
Yeah, so it is, I believe, October 24th on a Thursday at 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. If you're anywhere near the Atlanta area, make the drive, make it out. I was already doing super epic events, and so to have Michael with me, kind of co-hosting this with me is going to be an event that you don't want to miss, and a series that we'll be doing together. So the first one is the 24th, and then the next one will be 2 weeks after that on the 7th of November. And then the last one will be the 21st. So we're basically going to break up different topics as far as helping align you to your purpose. First one being why you being out of shape and not being in the best shape that you can be in is preventing you from finding and aligning to your purpose. And then the next one is going deeper into what we touched on here as far as your minimums and your foundation and your disciplines of consistently good, always beating, occasionally exceptional. And then the last event going to be about living a life in your purpose abundantly and living the life of your dreams, and how you can do it as well as, a story like Michael, who was working in corporate 15 months ago, has transformed his life, has over 1 million followers, and a top podcast in the health and wellness space, and having a huge impact on the community and living a life of his dreams. And then the retreat will be December 6th through the 8th, the first weekend of December. So we're going to conclude the year on a weekend retreat. If you've ever wanted to come to a weekend retreat, or you've been to something like this, this is an event, a retreat you're absolutely not going to want to miss. We're going to have cold plunges. We're going to have, it's all inclusive. We're going to have all healthy meals. Smoke's going to do the whole breakdown as far as nutrition and understanding like macros and protein and carbohydrates and fats and everything. He already talks about his whole morning routine with essential minerals and optimized minerals and vitamins and all of that stuff. I'm going to be breaking deep into a lot of the stuff we covered today, but going deeper as far as purpose, formula, how to find your purpose, discover your purpose, align closer to it, generate the energy and motivation to step into it, and then going deep into some healing exercises too, of finding out the interferences of what's preventing you from stepping into what you know you need to do. And we're going to be doing physically hard challenges. I mean, the whole thing is going to be
anything you could think of that we would be into is probably going to be a byproduct of this retreat or in the agenda. And there will be, by the time this comes out, there will be information in the bio for you to grab tickets to the event and get into looking into what the retreat looks like, and coming and spending a weekend with us in probably North Georgia somewhere.
Yeah, probably North Georgia, somewhere southeast, North Georgia, Tennessee, mountain, something like that is what we're looking at. So.
Well, dude, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Me, bro.
This is a pleasure. We'll do it again soon.
Yes.